Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show here on, was it Monday, the 28th of September. And yes, having some camera issues, new setup here, as you can see, in a new location this week, and also running off the old mobile phone. So hopefully we don't have any connection issues this evening. As I say, running solo at the moment for the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind New Zealand Sports Radio, and thank you very much for joining me. So as I'm on my own, if you have any questions, then please do put them in the live chat. Always happy to take your questions and answer them. Some of the things we'll be having a quick chat about European Champions Cup. We'll also talk about the Super Rugby returning in South Africa, and perhaps some things around the Mitre 10 Cup and Farah Palmer Cup as well. So kicking off then, we are going to have a brand new winner of the European Champions Cup, or European Heineken European Champions Cup, whatever it's called nowadays, with Racing 92 and Exeter Chiefs making the final. Racing beating Saracens and Exeter Chiefs getting past Toulouse. Also, I've not seen either of these games, it's going to be cool to see a new name on the trophy. It shows a bit of changing of the guard as well. You've got to say, Saracens, obviously because of their salary cap breaches and changing of their salaries, it's the end of an era for them. Toulon, the other people who have won this competition over the recent years, it's been between Toulon, Saracens and Leinster, the only three teams that won it for the past 9 years or something. Obviously not the force they used to be. Leinster still there, and they're going to be around again next year. But it's good to see that we have some new names on there. Cool set, Paul. Well, yes, this is the new broadcasting from Waihi this week. For those of you that don't know, I've just purchased a property here. We'll be doing it up, saying it's bed and breakfast to earn some sort of income, and we'll be moving out here at sort of beginning of November time frame. But I'm here this week in the property. And so didn't see any of the European Champions Cup games, so that's kind of where it's at. Do let us know your thoughts in the live chat. It is interesting that Exeter Chiefs have come through now. They were everyone's favourite team. When they came up, the underdog, the unfashionable team, the team that came through, the only members-owned club in the Premiership. Their utterances over the past couple of years have kind of diminished, have sort of pushed them down. They're not the sort of favourite team anymore. You've got to say they're the most vocal against Saracens, which is fine, but because obviously they lost out to Saracens in a couple of finals, but having the minute silence from Maggie Thatcher and bringing politics into sport didn't help. They've become vocal about wanting ring fencing in the Premiership when they're kind of a relatively newly promoted side, and also being totally insensitive to their name, or the branding and their name, the branding around their name as well, and their logo. How it has really sort of knocked them down from being that everyone's favourite second team in the Premiership, unfortunately. And you hope that they'll. You can't see it happening with Tony Rowe there, unfortunately, but you'd hope they would become more cognizant of that and change. I think with Tony Rowe basically managing the main sponsor, they're not going to necessarily have the same commercial pressures that other clubs in their situation would do to relook at their branding and their name. So shame that it's unlikely that would get looked at. They are my team, but I do have a couple of Exeter Chiefs jerseys but I do wonder whether I can actually wear them with that branding on. So it's so yeah, we'll see how that how that progresses over the future years. We also had the return of rugby in South Africa, the Super Rugby double header, with the Bulls beating the Sharks 49-28. And that could have been an awful lot worse than it was. It was 35-0 after 32 minutes. And then it sort of evened itself out after that kind of point. But wow, real statement there from was it Jake White's team, the Bulls, to show that yes, that they're on the improve, which is going to see how that's interesting to see how they go in the Currie Cup and the Super Rugby Unlocked. In the second game, we saw the Lions take on the Stormers 21-34 in that one. I think perhaps a bit more cagey fare, a bit more kicking in that one. And yeah, Simon, good to see there that so you could just see the happiness in their faces that they're playing rugby again. Yeah, it's great to see it's back there. I've not heard or seen anything around the green and gold schoolyard selections yet. Really looking forward to see how that pans out, and it'll be interesting to see how the two coaches go about choosing their sides. And so I've not got anyone on with me as to how would you approach it? Would you be going, you know what, I need a guy to lead me around the pitch, or would you be looking at going, okay, look, scarcity of locks, get in there, get the locks first. Do you pick the you pick locks the first 3 rounds and deny the opposition to have any decent locks, or do you target one of theirs to try and sort of corner the market in one position, or do you kind of get your early spots and spread them through the spine of the team? Some beautiful tactics there that could be played out around how you go about selecting a side in a sort of school ground situation. Obviously, way back when we were in the school grounds, you just basically picked the best players, and then you figured out a team after that at the end of the day. But it's a bit different now with this sort of side. So those are the kind of the main talking points, I think, from Europe and from South Africa. I guess the other talking point around Europe is just how it just shows how disjointed rugby is. All right, you've got 3 competitions that all supply teams to the European Champions Cup, and all 3 have taken different approaches in how they finished off last season or finished off still playing last season, and how they start next season. You had the French, they cancelled, said, right, yeah, that's it, it's finished, and we're just going to start afresh. And they started their season sort of first. You had the Pro 14 that went, okay, we'll just play some local derbies because they're the safer ones to play, obviously being a cross-country competition, and then go into some quick shortened finals, get it out of the way. And a couple of weeks later, basically, I think this is current weekend, they kick off the next season. And then you've got the Gallagher Premiership, which is going, we're going to play out the rest of that season. We ain't, and we're going to complete every single game, playing midweek, playing not midweek games to fit them in. Any idea of play welfare straight out the window, madness by then on that one. And there you go. So that disjointed thing, that disjointedness of rugby union is sort of really being shown in all its glory there. In the fact that you've got those three sides. I mean, the Gallagher, both the Pro 14 and the Top 14 will have started their seasons before the European Champions Cup finished and before the Gallagher Premiership finishes. And it's just a total mess. As a casual fan, would you know what's going on? Absolutely not. You wouldn't have a clue and if we're trying to grow the sport and try and encourage new fans, having this totally disjointed approach to it all is just nuts. Someone said that France legally have to cancel the top 14 because the government ordered it. I think it was more that they weren't allowed to play any more games. If they had said, "Hey, we're going to play," or delay them by 6 months, I'm not sure if the French government would have complained and would have been upset about that. But it does seem to have been the best approach out of the three, I think, of it. But there you go. That's just a personal opinion there. But really, yeah, just an absolute mess up there. Simon brings up the point that the Asian Dragons have pulled out of joining Super Rugby. Yeah, they always said that they weren't looking at doing 2020. They weren't interested in that. They always said they were looking at 2021. And I think they're still in it for 2021. So the Asia Pacific Dragons, based out of Singapore, still in it for 2021. If there is a space, who knows what structure we're looking at. It's looking that far ahead. But yeah, we've still got the 3 different bids: the one from Hawaii, the one involving counties, and the one involving Bay of Plenty with the China lines there. So there's still 3 options, plus there've been talks with the Western Force, with Twiggy Forrester. Now, him coming in as a 6th team would be an absolute disaster for cross-Tasman relations. And let's be honest, those relations are at an all-time low as it is. Or, well, actually, someone would tell me historically they've been even lower, but they are at a real low point between Australia and New Zealand in the rugby. And that is, yeah, so I really would think that talking with Twiggy to be that 6th team would be a really poor move politically from my point of view. Clearly, we don't get to see all of what's going on in those discussions, but what we've seen in public has not been good between the 2 sides. And I think actually probably that all probably happened since this last show. It's amazing, isn't it, how long a week should be. So we've had SANZAAR come out and announce when the Rugby Championship will be, or maybe, but that does mean that the last game would mean that the New Zealand players could not get home to New Zealand, quarantine for 14 days, and be with their families by Christmas. They would have to wait until the weekend. And that's caused an awful lot of controversy. And joining me is Stephen Harris. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, not too bad, Paul. I do apologise, a bit late to the show tonight, but once again, always a privilege and a pleasure to be on the show.
You see, this is daylight savings. It's thrown everybody. You're totally forgiven, sir. No worries at all. So yes, why can't we just stick with one time throughout the year and keep it nice and simple? Moving these clocks around forwards and backwards, just too confusing.
I agree with you. I'm even having a coffee, and it's what, 8:15 at night. Crazy.
Oh, that is crazy. I'm on my 2nd beer. Definitely the way to go. So yeah, covered up on Europe and South Africa. But if you've got any other comments on those areas, we can happy to go back and talk about them. But I just think that actually the SANZAAR news about the Rugby Championship happened this week. That seems like an absolute age ago, but I think it was Wednesday last week that it happened, where SANZAAR came out. They announced some dates. New Zealand Rugby then said, we haven't agreed to those dates, we haven't signed off on them. Australia came back and said, you were around the table when we said, let's have a 5-week tournament rather than a 6-week tournament, and everyone said no. So you were there, the discussions, and they're saying, no, we weren't. Yes, we were. So yeah, it's just a bit of a mess, really, Steve, isn't it? And you're not quite sure who to believe and what has actually been said behind closed doors.
Yeah, you would have thought somewhere in there dates were mentioned. Okay, we're having a 6-week tournament. Yes, that's correct. But when does it start and when does it finish? Hello.
Yep. Yep, there is that as well. That's true. So I think the one thing this does tell us, though, is that communication between Australia and New Zealand is at probably one of its lowest ebbs. You might remember a time when it's been worse, but it does seem to be at so this is one of the lowest. There's the lowest time I can remember the communication between these two countries.
Paul, I think you'd have to go back to pre-2003 Rugby World Cup sharing rights in Australia when David McCullum or McCaw, not Richie McCaw, but forget the guy's name, McCaw and Rutherford were in charge of New Zealand rugby, and that just turned out to be a shambles. They couldn't find any middle ground, and at the end of the day, they actually lost that co-hosting rights back in 2003. Now that all happened pre-2003, obviously the World Cup, but I think you are right. They're very, very low at the moment. I mean to say, we really need the Australians in our game at the moment. It's I think it all started earlier the year when they couldn't really agree on a super rugby format, Paul, and I think it's just continued over from there, and it almost seems like they're just going out of their way to get up each other's nose.
I mean, obviously we've had a number of regime changes in Australia over the last, it seems like the last 2 weeks, but but to me, we've got a new CEO in New Zealand rugby. I just don't believe we would I wouldn't imagine you'd hear this kind of stuff if Steve Chu had been in charge. I wasn't always a big fan of Steve Chu. I'll be blunt, but he didn't. Just about every single discussion or negotiations he was involved with happened behind closed doors, and he came out with an answer. It wasn't dealt with in public.
Yeah.
With the new Mark Richardson, I think. He seems to have a different style to Steve Chu. I think that might be part of what this is. We're seeing a different. Yeah, this is the new regime, folks. This is how things are going to be done going forwards.
Yeah, Mark Robinson, he's definitely taking a softly approach at the minute, probably just trying to appease all the parties. But I'm just wondering what sort of advice he's getting at the minute.
So, folks, at the moment we've got 2 Bledisloe Cup games coming up. There was also discussions about that as well, until there was changes to the quarantine rules to allow the Australian team to practice whilst in quarantine. The good side about that is that I believe that we've got some Farah, well, at least for the Auckland game, I believe it is. I think the Farah Palmer Cup game is is part of a double header or the warm-up game for the Bledisloe Cup up at Eden Park. So that'll be good to give the ladies a bigger crowd, a bit more exposure. For that one, I can't remember who Auckland are playing. But hey, international rugby, folks, is nearly back, and they did seem to manage to eventually come to an agreement on that one. But again, that one had to be fought out or discussed in the public arena as well to manage to get themselves to an agreement as to how that could happen. The Jordan Clark here, interesting one there. The Christmas problem could easily be resolved by taking backup players who are willing to play the final test. Interesting one. They're already talking about taking an extra 11 players on top of the 35, I think it is, in the All Black squad. So yes, I think there could be some players who might not even see any game time going over there, which would be a shame. You'd hope that everyone who does go gets at least one game under their belt during those 6 games.
Yeah, Paul, I've got to just quickly butt in there. Once again, to take an extra 11 players and maybe not even use a lot of those players. Once again, you're compromising the Mitre 10 Cup, Paul. And if we think right back to the beginning of the season, when the McKinsey report came out, there was a lot of talk in and around engagement. So all I can say is, here we go again. I don't know if our viewers agree with me, but listen, I'm really enjoying the Mitre 10 Cup. I've enjoyed those first 2 rounds with the All Blacks in. Obviously, it's some teams were lucky enough to have their All Blacks for the rounds on the weekend, and I would suggest it showed. But once again, they compromised this local competition, which everybody loves.
Yeah, look, I agree that they've only got 5 props in the original squad, so I understand they need to take extra props, right, to cover any injuries. But I do think in other positions, you've got ample cover already. So, for example, do you need to take a third fly half if you've got Richard Mo'unga, Beauden Barrett, Damien McKenzie, Geordie Barrett, TJ Perenara, all there, who can all play in that position? So, yeah, I do think they need some extra players out on top of that 35, but I think purely in the front row. And we've got 3 hookers in there, I think, have we? Or was there only 2? Yeah, 3 in there.
Coles, Taylor, and Amua.
Yeah. So you probably again survive with that, and that's look. If one of them gets injured, you fly someone over, and okay, he can't play the first game, but he can do 14 days quarantine and then join the squad. So I think that yeah, I don't think they need all 11, but I do think they do need some prop cover to go with them. I think 5 is not enough for that. But again, it's a balancing act, isn't it? But we don't seem to be seeing that. We don't seem to see this balancing act. We seem to be seeing this is what's important, and everything else will take second, third, or even fourth fiddle to that end of story kind of side of things. Talking about taking second fiddle, one of the ones that blew up on social media, or at least on Facebook, was that some of the Farah Palmer Cup games got taken off Sky to play first 15 games. Now, which to me seems a little bit crazy. Do the first 15 games have a bigger audience than the Farah Palmer Cup? Very probably, but that's because it's had media investment by Sky building that audience over several years, and there's lots of talk, especially this year, around, but has been over the last couple of years, around the over professionalisation of schoolboy rugby, and to see, so by putting it on TV ahead of Farah Palmer Cup games, taking Farah Palmer Cup games off, I'm definitely not comfortable with that, with those choices as well.
Paul, the irony of it, probably the best game of the weekend was non-televised, and they had to rely on an English commentator, from what I understand, updating the scores. But also, I did look for a live stream on that, so I'm not too sure if Counties Manukau actually live streamed that. I couldn't seem to find the stream for that game, but that turned out, that game was always on the cards. That would be the game of the round, and so it turned out, Paul. So really disappointing.
I was at that game, so yes, they did start live streaming that game, and I've had a few chats with them. I had a chat with them afterwards, explaining some of the technical issues as to why it might have dropped out for the last about 15-20 minutes, I think it was. So I've discussed that with them and suggested some alterations as to how they can improve things in future, or including offering to do some commentary for them if they want for that, because it had sound, but it was uncommentated. Was the stream? And yes, I did get onto the Farah Palmer Cup fan page, and because I was sat in the media box, I did a typed commentary of the last 10 or so minutes of that game for that one. So yes, so it's there's a lot of around the the streaming, and there's been a lot of talk about the different levels of streaming between the different provinces. New Zealand Rugby provides, from what I can tell, zero guidance or zero help or around providing those live streams. So all those live streams are done purely on pretty much on a goodwill, or actually yes, on a goodwill basis by people around the club. So if you go over to the Bay of Plenty one and you have something Gecko Productions doing it for you, on blank as their name, then you're going to get a multi-camera stream with a commentator, with good graphics, with a team of about 7 or 8 people doing it. If you do it at Bay of Plenty, where they have not got a independent production house doing it pretty much for free, then you end up with one person on a camera that they use for taking their doing their high performance or video analysis, and try streaming it through that. The levels are massively different, but it's purely down to who is basically offering their time and offering for free their time, skills and equipment for free to do it. There is no, as I say, as far as I can tell, there's nothing from New Zealand Rugby saying, if you want to live stream a game, you should have a camera of this quality. You need to have an Ethernet cable link to do this. If you want to do multi-camera, you're going to need this equipment. None of that kind of stuff, as far as I can tell, has been given to the provinces. And to be blunt, some of the provinces just, it's a brand new thing for them. They just don't have the experience and the knowledge to do it properly. Yep. You saw that, Stephen?
Yep. No, I'm still there. Just tuning in, just looking in a couple of the comments. Simon Hughes says he can remember, can't remember the name, but apparently there was a very good stream from the Bay of Plenty Taranaki match.
Yeah, there was. So yeah, it's something Gecko Productions from memory. I had a chat with them at the game, and yeah, again, they've been around for like 6 to 8 weeks. Purely stood up because they spotted there was a need for streaming of local sport, and hence they're doing it over there in Tauranga. So great for them to do so. But as I say, they didn't exist 2 months ago. And this, so yeah, it's an as need basis. Where should we go next? Someone's saying, yeah, why were the All Blacks in the draw when there's 3 weeks to the first test? My guess is to have some family time, because it's probably going to be the last weekend they have family time before they get sort of fully into the All Blacks bubble, and they don't see their family again until Christmas. So that's probably why most of them had the weekend off. With that, look, you might say, hey, but they're going to be in the country for the next 5 weeks, whatever it is. Yes, but look, families have day jobs from Monday to Friday as well. So it's to catching up with family. I can understand why most of the players had a game or had a weekend off. To be honest with you. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in the live chat. Simon mentioned, yes, Sky Sports Next do have a YouTube channel for community sport, but again, it's about and if you think about the counties versus Northern game, all the cameras were there because they produced and showed the game straight after that, which is my 10 Cup game. So they had the entire setup was sat there doing nothing, and they decided not to use it. Wow. Maybe it's to do with they pay by the hour or something for certain people, but you'd think they could have done at least a knockdown version of one camera stream for that game. Yeah, I think those are the sort of the hot topics in rugby from this last week. I'm kind of I've been all over the place, to be honest with you folks. As I say, moving house, and you can see the new venue. Also training to work on the election that starts next week as well. So that's been going on. I'll be running a voting place for that. So yes, I've not prepared anything else, Stephen. Where are you at?
I suppose just before I saw Simon Hughes make a comment about in South Africa, it was good to see some Super Rugby in South Africa back up and running, and obviously a couple of games over the weekend where they basically caught up. Were those sort of semi-final games or like round robin games, Paul?
There's one-off games to basically pre-season games before the Currie Cup starts. So the doubleheader in Pretoria, I've run through the scores earlier briefly, but yeah, no, they're kind of pre-season games ahead of the real stuff starting in 2.
And of course, next week we've got the Springbok Green versus the Springbok Gold game happening as well. That's probably going to be like a trial, isn't it? You there, Paul?
Okay, I think I'm back.
You are.
Yeah, so yeah, green and gold next week. I'm really looking for. I'm not sure when they're doing the selections. I've not seen the selection of the two teams. I'm really looking forward to that as well. On that, next week, we should probably just touch on the games that we'll be going to next weekend. So next weekend, I will be at Bay of Plenty versus Auckland on Friday night in Rotorua. So if you're there, folks, do say hello. Back to level 1, obviously, in the Bay of Plenty. So not the same restrictions as you have for the Auckland games. Unfortunately, I'm busy on the Sunday, so can't get to any games. But Stephen, you're planning on heading up to Northland for the Farah Palmer Cup and the Mitre 10 Cup games up there.
Yes, I am, Paul. I'm heading up. I think Farah Palmer Cup, the Caldy are playing the North Harbour ladies in the early game, and the late game we've got Northland taking on a Taranaki, probably a Taranaki team that will probably be looking to bounce back. It's certainly not going to be easy for them after that defeat, because that was quite a comprehensive beating they took from Otago. I must admit that it really surprised me, the score, and I'm not so surprised Otago lifted the shield, but really surprised by that scoreline, because it was quite comprehensive at the end of the day. And I suppose it beggars the question: do two players really make that much of a difference, Paul?
In this case, yes, I think they do. To be honest, oh yes, so apparently the two squads have been named. I've just found it on ESPN, so we'll take a look at those in a second. But yeah, the Barretts clearly make a big difference for that, because obviously that he was still there in the lock. So yeah, it's especially when you think Geordie Barrett's length of kicking in a game that I think had a strong wind element to it. I think kicking was a big was perhaps a big piece of that, and yeah, having his boot could have been handy, or would have been very handy on the day.
Now, Paul, a very good friend of mine, Tim Olive, is an Auckland referee, or officially ran the touchline in the Auckland Wellington game last week. But I wouldn't mind getting a hold of Tim and just getting some clarification on something I saw during the Mitre 10 Cup, and even I didn't realise that. And maybe even some of our watchers and listeners can fill me in here, or I'll have to go and look at a rule book. But I actually saw a line out in one particular game where the line out was crooked, but the other team didn't contest. And I didn't see that once. I saw it again yesterday in the, I think, Counties Manukau Northland game, where the Northland won a line out which was crooked, but Counties didn't contest. Is that a new rule, Paul?
It's not a new law, but it is an interpretation that the referees have decided to take. So yes, you won't find in the law book, but yeah, referees, unless you contest the line out, they're very lenient on it, on how straight it is.
So I suppose the key for everybody is somebody just jump off the ground, even if you're not going to get to the ball.
Yep. Always contest, unless you're expecting a maul and you're down to try and Okay, folks, I'm not sure if the storm is interrupting my Wi-Fi or my mobile data. So hopefully we're back again. The Springbok selections, so we can see them. He says, "There we go." And I will just try and resize my window a bit to help with the size there.
There's a lot of names there that don't exactly stand out. Obviously, a few that do stand out. The obvious names, Sia Khaleesi in the loose forwards, and of course Dwayne Vermeulen. But there was now Now I think his name is pronounced Jurano Augustus, the number 8. Now I can recall him being a standout for the Springbok under-20s about two or three seasons ago at the Worlds. Very, very promising loose forward. So it probably doesn't come as a surprise that he's come into the frame.
Hey, what's interesting here, you've got players like Sia Khaleesi from the Stormers. You've got Dwayne Vermeulen, who's obviously at the Bulls, as is Franz Stein, Elton Yankees from the Lions. So they haven't picked by team, that's for certain. They haven't tried to pick combinations, have they? They really have gone for players from all over the shop, which is interesting.
Didn't they do the old sort of backyard sort of ball rush thing at school? I'll pick that guy there. That guy gets picked by him. Did they do something similar like that?
No, they did something like that, exactly. But you might think that one of the coaches might go, you know what, I'm going to try and pick the scrum half and the fly half from the same team to get my combinations in. Now, whether the other coach decides to deliberately break that up, you don't know. So that's the green squad. On the gold side, gone for a couple of maybe started by picking his props first, because a couple of names there, the props I recognise. So maybe that was his approach, thinking that he had that there was other areas that he could pick up decent players later on. Remember, this is African-based players that are available for this, not the European ones.
Yes.
Hence why there's some names in here that are, pardon me, a lot less recognisable than others.
I like the inclusion of Kerwin Bosch. I think he's a very, very classy footballer, the Sharks' first five, and that doesn't surprise me. He's a sort of kid that can slot not only into first five but also into fullback as well. Warwick Gallant from the Bulls been quite a consistent fullback for the last couple of seasons in Super Rugby. So these guys have definitely got an opportunity to progress their claims.
Yeah, so not to know, I think the gold team has got slightly less well-known players. I was thinking it's perhaps the other way around. And I think, look, folks, with the connection issues that we're having, I think it's probably a good time for us to call it a night on this one. Sorry for that, folks. Obviously, next Monday, I'll be back in Hamilton. We'll have the old Ethernet cable and fibre. Fibre is getting installed in here next week. And things will improve from there. So this is a temporary glitch, folks. Hope you're all having a wonderful start to the week. Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining me. And catch you all tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. for the morning sports briefing. Lots of crossed fingers that we have a good connection in the morning.